You know, this was going to be such a great comeback to Little Rock, and I expected to be here under very different circumstances. And I showed everybody the picture on my phone. It's me and Hillary. See, I have this wonderful picture of her. So Hillary and the Children's Defense Fund was a major inspiration to what we've been able to accomplish in San Francisco, and that is absolutely no exaggeration. So I want to just recognize her and honor her and thank her for everything she's done to inspire me and to make it possible to do what we've done in San Francisco. So I feel like my story is built on the back of her story. So I was here actually in 1992. As I haven't been back, but I was here to celebrate this huge, exciting victory we'd had in San Francisco of passing the first children's fund in the country and having this dedicated portion of our budget dedicated to children. And I'm going to tell you for a minute just how we got there, but then, talk to you about sort of what happened in the 25 years since we were able to do that, and what I'm doing now to help people sort of figure out, okay, how can you do that in your community and why is it so important? San Francisco, when I got there, so I've had this incredible journey of being the head of the major child advocacy organization in the city for 26 years, then the head of the city's Department of Children, Youth, and Their Families, then the head of a community school initiative, and now I'm started this initiative called Funding the Next Generation. I'll tell you about why I call it that. So I've had this incredible opportunity to be a change agent from many different perspectives. But I'm so proud of what we've been able to accomplish in San Francisco. When I first got there, you think of San Francisco as this liberal place. I've been telling the students that the bureaucracies in San Francisco were as barbaric and limited as any place. And in the 80s, we reached the low point when we had 180,000 kids in the city, and then we got down to 120,000. Everybody left, and it just the issue of kids was so not on the public agenda. And even I go to all my sort of progressive friends, they go like, "This is not a progressive issue, Margaret. We're concerned about housing and zoning, et cetera, et cetera." So turning children's issues into a progressive issue, on the progressive agenda, turning them into a very important civic issue is what I've been about, and we've been very successful. We have 120,000 kids in the city still. You have 45,000 in Little Rock. We have $400 million locked into our budget every year for kids. It's utterly astonishing. We have after school for all. We have preschool for all. We were the first people to do child health care for all. We have 3,000 jobs every year for young people. We have health clinics in every school. We have family resource centers in every neighborhood. We have totally reformed our juvenile justice system, which was just hate-filled and awful to kids. And we have created a youth voice in San Francisco with two kids, don't call them kids, to me, they're kids, two students on the school board, to a whole youth philanthropy arm of our city government, and a youth commission that is so fabulous and so outspoken and is required to review every piece of legislation that goes through San Francisco that has any impact on kids. So I just want to say, for starters, because, I'm here in Arkansas, and the first thing people are thinking is, what could this woman from San Francisco possibly offer people from Arkansas? And I get that all the time. It's like, you live in a bubble, Margaret. I do want to say The bubble is not so perfect, and it certainly wasn't perfect when we started this work. This resistance to moving money from one place to another is always the same. I was telling the students earlier, I have, my long list of people who can't stand me in San Francisco, because from the judges, to the dog owners, because I wanted parks safe for kids, not dogs. And so this is hard work, no matter where you are, even if you're in San Francisco. But just to make my point, I got to come here. I got to make this speech, and the governor's wife was there, and it was so exciting, and I said what we had done in San Francisco, and then I got to talk to this New Ventures project. I don't know if you had this New Ventures. It was funded by the Annie Casey people. Anyway, I went and talked to them, and they were sort of like a hub of supposed they were going to change Little Rock, and I think it just went out of business fairly recently. And I got into kind of a tussle with them, about the importance of money, the importance of having the resources to do what needed to be done. And so as part of my project 3 years ago, I started calling around the country and saying, where have there been children's funds? Where has some of the action happened? And I ended up talking to this woman, Dorothy Nails, from Little Rock. I don't know if any of you know her. She was in charge of the Prevention, Intervention, and Treatment Fund. And she said, Margaret, do you remember, coming to Little Rock? Do you remember what you said to the New Ventures people? Do you remember she said, you inspired us to fight for money for kids. And I swear to God, 2 years later, you all enacted a sales tax, a special fund that's still in existence that funds the Prevention, Intervention, and Treatment Program. And I read this paragraph in an evaluation that was done years later on it, and I think it's a quote from a former mayor. It's somebody who was in power. Little Rock is unique among municipalities in its size across the country. Voters have reiterated their desire to see tax dollars used in ways that go beyond many other cities who are stuck arguing over streetlights and potholes, and I would say police and fire. They're relentless in their need for money. We need good streetlights and fewer potholes, but we're committed as any city to also concern ourselves with the condition of our children and make available to every young person the community-based supports that fill those critical gaps. I just felt fabulous. I felt like I never knew that had happened, and I felt like people were inspired by what had happened in San Francisco. So that's my story about the relevance. But first, just to review the basics here, because I think you all know it. I'm looking out. Child poverty in this country is terrible. It's 1 in 5 kids live in poverty. The younger you are, the more likely you are to live in poverty. Poverty is $24,000 a year for a family of 4. 40% live on half that. We're 34th out of 35th, according to UNICEF, in terms of the child poverty rate in Western industrialized countries. Only Romania is behind us. There's a group of military leaders who wrote a report called Ready, Willing, and Unable to Serve. Their position is that 75% of the young people in this country are not really eligible to be in the armed forces because they've either been in the criminal justice system or they're not physically or educationally capable. The statistic that moved me most when I was first getting into this child advocacy field was, in 1960, there were 5 people in the workforce for every person on Social Security. Today it is 3. By 2040, it will be 2. I go like, oh. We have no one to lose. We have absolutely no one to lose. We are dependent. You want to sell your house to somebody who is employed and able to support themselves. So when I started in this, we have opportunities now that we didn't have. I mean, there is a growing recognition, in spite of the last election. I mean, she won, that of the enormous financial benefits of investing in children, and there's lots of studies. There was one just done by NIH. For every dollar you put into preschool, you save $11, and down the line. There's a lot of information about brain development. It's becoming part of people's knowledge about what's going on for kids. I hate to even mention pollsters because now they're on everybody's hate list, but the polling is pretty overwhelming. Like I said, I'm like at war with all the pollsters I know right now, but they're pretty optimistic about the fact that children poll well, even across the political spectrum, that when people want to do something. I had a guy who ran a courthouse campaign. He said, all we did is talk about the benefits of a new courthouse to kids. I go, seriously? But people understand that the public cares about kids. They poll well. People understand health. Education polls well. And maybe after we get over the horror of this election, the sort of fact that they poll well across the political spectrum will turn out to be true. And the other thing that's happening and that I'm obsessed about and that I have spent my life thinking about is what can you do at the local level? I ran a very successful organization. Everybody said, become a state organization, become a national organization. No. The local level, there's so much we can do. That's where we organize. That's where we build the constituency. That's where we have the flexibility to use money and resources the way we think they're best used. That's where there's a hub of sort of creativity. That's where people will vote for the child care center down the street where they won't send the money to DC or to their state capital. So I didn't expect to be talking about this under these circumstances, but this was called the new localism. There's a book called The Metropolitan Revolution. It's like, okay, now's the time to hone in. There are things we can do at the local level while the federal level is totally falling apart. And there are things, and in California at least, the state levels, well, it'll be a long time before we get back to where we once was. So my story didn't start. It was 10 years in the making till we got the Children's Fund, but I'll just tell you about it for a few minutes because the steps we went through are things that I'm helping people now all over California start to go through. I mean, it started with creating a children's agenda for the city. Didn't take us long to figure out that we needed money behind the agenda, and words. I'm like, just show me the money, because you can adopt any philosophy you want, but we had an agenda, and then we just organized for 3 years something we called the Children's Budget Coalition, and that's when I went to the Children's Defense Fund. That's when I saw Hillary Clinton, and I had the pleasure of, I think I'm one of the only people in the country that still has the children's budget book that they wrote, and I got to have her sign it. And anyway, we carried on. And I was just like inspired by the Children's Defense Fund. And she was president of the board. And actually, I was invited here by Arkansas Advocates for Kids when I came in 1992. Anyway, and I went back to San Francisco. Okay, we need a children's budget in San Francisco. And I'll figure out tomorrow what a children's budget is, but we need a children's budget. And we submitted three children's budgets to the city. We organized everyone. What should we fund? What should the priorities be? What exactly, how much money will it cost? No rhetoric. We need this many respite care slots. We need nurses in the schools. We need this many child care slots. We need this many jobs. And this is what it's going to cost. And this is where you can get the money if you really wanted to. We did well for a while, and then we're meeting with the mayor 3 years later, and the fire department's, rallying outside City Hall, yelling about they don't have enough money. That is such a lie. But, he said, I can't, Compare the children's advocates to the fire department. I have to go with the fire department. We don't have enough money to really put any more money in the budget for kids. So long story short, we crafted an idea which said, actually, the city should be required to put aside money for kids every year in the budget. And we picked a number, 2.5% of the property tax. Turned out to be a really smart thing, property values in San Francisco. And not only that, the city cannot reduce funding for children. We have to have a baseline budget. So any new money we get has to be over and above the baseline. And then we created this planning process. We have to have a community needs assessment. We have to have an allocation plan. And there's some of this you can do without necessarily the money. And I will never forget, as long as I live, that every single person in the city council, and we call it a board of supervisors, said, no, 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 we can't support this. It ties our hands. It's bad public policy. It is bad public policy, except that it's better than the existing public policy. Hence, I have learned my entire life that, perfect is the enemy of good, because no idea I've ever had is perfect. No idea we've ever fought for is perfect. Anyway, we had to put it on the ballot by signature of the voters, which you can do in some places. You can't do that all. We had to get 68,000 signatures, brought into City Hall in little red wagons, pulled by kids. Political turnabout of all time. Political lesson of a lifetime. The minute we did that, people are calling all the elected officials, would you put my name on the next piece of literature? Of course. You walk into City Hall with 68,000 signatures and say you're going to turn this into a public debate, put it on the ballot, so you have to publicly oppose it or not. And we made these things, San Francisco Loves Kids, and said, we dare you. You mount the San Francisco Doesn't Love Kids campaign. Well, a lot of people did, and I could tell you all about that, but it did pass. It passed by 54%. The lesson was emblazoned in my brain forever. Take the initiative, go public, use the electoral process. The power of it is so hard to fight with us about kids. Learn to be political, propose a specific solution, no more just rhetoric. Don't be afraid of drama, and don't wait for the perfect time because everybody told us it wasn't the right time. So, forward 25 years or whatever it is, the impact of this fund is transformative. There is nothing like money as a trigger for change. It's been reauthorized twice. It started with $12 million when it was fully in place. And it's all been community organizing. It's been people who are, at the last time around, we said, okay, we want 5% of the property tax revenue. We ended up with a measure on the ballot for 4%, which was like, oh my God, I can't believe we got this. I mean, we did polling. We had the same, organization of providers, of people who cared about kids. And now it's going to be $93 million when it's fully in place in 2 years. That's astonishing. Anyway, $93 million, and then we have this baseline, and then we changed the legislation. We made it much more. I was in a position of to implement this, and I go, what kind of idiot wrote this? Because we make the city do planning, then we make the city be transparent. You have to do all kinds of outreach and surveys of what people want and go to the public. We turned this whole process into a public engagement process. People feel like they own that fund, and you better not screw with it. And then, 15 years later, a member of our city council said, that was so successful, we should do it again. And he invented another fund, which is called the Public Education Enrichment Fund, which gives money to the schools for arts, SLAM, sports, libraries, arts, music, and student support services, and universal preschool. And so now we have both these funds. They're huge. They have a baseline. As I said, we have $400 million locked into our thing. So I learned, success leads to success. Power leads to power. So it's been such an exciting journey. It has expanded opportunities for kids. I could give you the data on the programs. It allows people to focus on prevention. It's allowed us to leverage all kinds of programs. It's allowed us to do systems reform in an exciting way that I will tell you about. So it funds out of school time, early care, health, violence prevention, and I could give you the data on each of those things, but I'm going to show how the enormous progress we've made. So we have built a movement, sort of starting with this children's fund, and the interplay, I've been thinking about it, the interplay between I forgot a key part of this. The other thing it did is force us to create an office of children. I got to lead that office for 5 years. That's when I wondered who wrote this stuff. So it's a hub in government whose job it is to be an advocate for kids, and it acts as a counterforce to a probation department or a recalcitrant health department or a welfare system that doesn't want to change. And it gives you the chance to seed money and create all kinds of partnerships with other city departments that promotes change. So the interplay of having this fund, having this incredible office, and having this kick-ass advocacy group, which I led, that just never said, we give up, never, ever. And, I did tell the students earlier, I have people all over San Francisco who hate me, but it's okay, because we pushed the envelope over and over and over. So we have this inside-outside thing going. We learned the skill of, the handoff, the advocates push, the inside government, implements, and we have this money that we can use in a flexible way. So it's very exciting. So let me give you some examples of how this happened. Early childcare. Oh my God, huge issue, people's biggest expense. Most people pay more money for childcare than they pay for rent. It's a huge issue that is related to poverty. We did this early care initiative budget with all kinds of things in it about quality improvements and facility improvements, et cetera, et cetera. And then we invented this thing called a baby brigade, where we said every year we're going to have babies take over City Hall. And the childcare community really collaborated with that. It was fabulous. And the first year we did it, the head of the budget committee was there, and these kids are getting out of it. One child care center sent a limousine, and these kids get out of the limousine in their little overalls. And it's very dramatic, very exciting. She promised right away, okay, you can have your quality child care fund. And that's how we got mental health services in our child care centers, and it's become a model program for the country. And then the next meeting, the child care workers come to the next year's budget, and I'm like, never miss a budget. Never miss a budget. I don't care if you have a dedicated fund. Never miss an election. Never miss a budget to talk about kids, to get more resources for kids. So the child care workers said, the biggest thing in the field is our wages. We lose a third of our field every year. We make less than parking lot attendants. That became the theme of our campaign. I said, this will never work, never work, never work. People don't like, people getting up talking about their wages. Well, it turned out to be okay. Turns out there are 10,000 parents in child care centers. Every single one of them sent a postcard to the mayor's office. The mayor's office had never gotten that many postcards, and they called our office and said, stop the postcards. So, of course, we said, could you send more postcards, guys? Keep going. Anyway, I could tell you the whole story, but it ended up with a wages program, first in the nation, to give more money to child care workers. And when they testify about it, they're crying about the couple $1,000s more they make. And so we thought, this is a really big thing. We'll take out a full-page ad in the New York Times to thank the mayor for being so brilliant to come up with the idea of doing this. The mayors have big egos, let me tell you. And 2 years later, we got federal money, just a windfall of federal money for economic development and employment. What'd the mayor do? Put it all into the child care wages and invented this thing called Wages Plus. It was the people leading. It was the parents leading. It was the power of parents. So, dear. I have about 10 stories like that. We also learned the power of youth voice. And I learned that, when the member of the Board of Supervisors said, I wish you would stop bringing the kids to these hearings, because it's so hard to say no to them. You tell an advocate that, how many kids do you have at the next hearing? At first it was kids testifying on things that was important to them. And we said, okay, it really has to come from young people. What is it they want? And there was a lot of furor at the time about, oppressive policies in the schools. Who was I talking to about oppressive policies in the schools? And we're going to have metal detectors, and we're going to have cops in the schools, and we're going to have, oppressive disciplinary policies. And the young people were up in arms about this. And I'm like, you have to have a positive solution. What's your alternative? And they studied it, thought about it, and said, we want a clinic in every school. We want to have mental health services in every school. And that's the alternative to, catching the children, young people, the students with problems. And they mounted a campaign about clinics in the schools. And one of the major barriers to clinics in schools was the health department never spoke to the schools. And I don't know if you have that problem here. It happens a lot of places. And, we're having a meeting with the health department and the schools, and all these kids walk in and just say, what are you doing? Why are you fighting with each other instead of what we want? The power of young people being their own advocates is something that we really discovered when I was head. So then we got clinics in like 5 or 6 schools, and when I was head of the department, I was able to use the Children's Fund then to make sure there was a clinic in every high school and some of our middle schools. So the interplay between the voice of young people and the department. We had parents who... I had a parent group, and I won't tell you everything they did about Rec and Park, et cetera, but they decided they wanted to work on school lunches. Have you ever been involved in school lunches? Anyway, they were like, ooh, can you eat this? So somebody said, let's take the school lunch to the superintendent and ask him if he can eat it. So they take the school lunch to the superintendent's office. He's not there. Big sign, can you eat this? It became a campaign for, at least 15 years, getting vending machines out of the schools. But it was parents saying the school food has to change. And I'm very proud that these things take a long time. But just in our last election, we finally got a school bond with a kitchen in it. So we can now prepare food fresh instead of importing frozen food from Minnesota to feed our kids. And we just passed a soda tax. And that will pay, that second time around, that will pay for sort of improving school lunches. When I was head of the department, people were going like, kids won't eat healthy food. I said, well, let's find out. Flexible fun. We funded salad bars in the schools. It was great. They were very popular, and it was a really instrumental part in changing the mindset of the school district about food. We had young people. We use elections. So we had a youth time campaign, and we had a program in every neighborhood that we wanted to see started, and young people would bring the candidates for mayor, presents from their neighborhood, saying what program they wanted, and we tried to sort of change the narrative campaign. We had bus shelter signs, and sort of like, we need to do positive things for our kids. We can't be afraid of our kids. And there were pictures of kids standing on street corners, saying, let's talk about what we need. I'm not a scary person. Anyway, the upshot of the whole thing is that We wanted to get beacon centers. I don't know if you guys heard about beacon centers there in New York. It was a program. It was really a community school program. It was in middle schools. And, I just remember when the mayoral candidate who won microphones sat in his face. He had no idea what to say when somebody said, "What are you going to do for the schools?" The only thing you could think of was, we're going to have beacon schools, because he heard us talk about it so much. A beacon school is a community school, really, with lots of programs. So we learned to use elections, and one of the things I'm most proud of is we have really totally transformed our juvenile justice system. And it was having the money. It was having an office in City Hall that would be a counterweight to the probation department. And all the reports and demonstrations and young people standing in front of the juvenile hall saying, "Close it down," and and I'm going like, you can't just say close it down. They became experts in something called risk assessment instruments. How do you assess who should be, they became experts in it. But the thing that made it happen was having this pot of money so we could set up evening detention centers, so we built a community-based intake system, treatment system, and now we have, we had 1,000 status offenders in petitions every year when we first started this. Now there are 4. We had 5,000 kids referred to probation. Now we have 750. We had 150 kids in the juvenile hall. Now we have 30. So we built, and I just sat down with the Center for Juvenile and Criminal Justice, say, you know what happened, Margaret? We built an alternative system. So we don't, I'm like, the state is going to wither away, the probation department is going to wither away. And that is, in fact, what happened. I know that you're having a big charter school thing here, going here. We have a similar thing. Don Fisher, and it's parents who fuck. I'm not a charter person. And we had a for-profit charter that, we've had a lot of charters and a lot of pressure on us to do charters. You have the Waltons, we have the Fishers, who are the GAP people and who have become, major charter people and want to see the school district significantly charterized. It is a core group of parents who have become the data police, who go after every single proposal, every single charter school, and have developed very good press connections and really dig deep into the data and deep into so many of the mischaracterizations that come out about charter schools. My closest friend is not a charter person and had been on the school board during 2 elections, and Don Fisher, who's like the richest person in the city, he's subsequently died, said, she will never get elected to the school board again. And she was elected 3 times after that. But that's San Francisco, what can I say? So we've learned a huge amount. We've learned the politics, we've learned the hardball. So I started this thing, Funding the Next Generation, and I called it Funding the Next Generation because, okay, that's the hardest part. Nobody wants to talk about money. Everybody wants to talk about what we should do, and I've been to 1,000 meetings, I've counted them, where we social workers, I'm a social worker, sit around and we say, oh my God, we know what to do, we just don't have the money to do it. And so I'm on this crusade to get people to get smart and become political and figure out, how do you get the money at the local level? And because that is the hardest thing, and that's what triggers change. And there's 3 ways to get money. I've written a book, How You Get the Money at the Local Level, which is on the web. And I go you can fight the good battle in the budget, and you should do it. A budget thing should never pass you up. You can do what we did, which is legislation that requires that certain money be set aside, kids get their fair share, and you can get new revenue sources, which is the hardest, but which we have to do. And so around the country and around the state, people are starting to work on sales taxes, property taxes, I wrote them all down, hotel, real estate transfer. We had a marijuana thing. We needed 2/3. We got 65.8%, but we're going back. This time we'll get 2/3. Somebody in Northern California said, let's do fertilizer, fee on fertilizer, because there's so much dope being now there'll be much more. Parking tax, developer fees, soda taxes, which is a business license fee, entertainment. And I will say, in San Francisco, it's like, we never have enough money to have every parent have enough, subsidized childcare, or every kid to have a summer job. We do now have a soda tax, and we do have a fee on, it was 49ers, they moved, Giants tickets that goes into recreation programs for kids. We do have a developer's fee, which goes into childcare centers. This time we did the school bond. This time we wanted to set aside a portion of the hotel tax for homeless families. That didn't work. We're going to do it again. One of my themes is, don't let it stop you. It's a marathon. It's never over. I tell people there are 3 strands of work to this. They all have to go on simultaneously. You have to make your case. You have to present your case to everyone. You have to develop, you have to find out what your community is spending on kids. We've started to call it a children's budget. If all you do in your community is get your city council to sort of analyze, what are you now spending? So we can say, how much is prevention? How much, how has this changed over time? Where is the money really going? Really important step for people in making the cases. People have done polling, able to go back to elected officials and say, look what the public supports. How do you build your base? In Stockton, they got their city council to do a Bill of Rights for kids, organize everyone around the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is a waste of time unless you're organizing to do something with that Bill of Rights, which they did, but it's gotten a whole lot of people going. And then, you start crafting your plan at the beginning. What's possible? What's legally possible? What's the soft spot between what you need and what can happen politically and what your capacity is? Because, you're going to do it and then you're going to do it again. So in Richmond, California, they turned this into a youth. It was primarily young people in a community project, and everybody was writing their piece of legislation and saying what the program priorities should be, what the process for giving the money away should be, and they got enough signatures to put it on the ballot. It'll be on the next on the ballot. And I do tell everybody this is an art, not a science, and you have to understand your election laws, and you have to learn to be political, and you have to live with the fact that nothing is perfect. And all my progressive friends go, oh, Margaret, but a soda tax is a regressive tax. I go like, hey, it's what we got. Diabetes is a regressive disease. Let's try it, because one, we need the money, and 2, nothing is perfect. So I feel like part of my life has been like, how do we get all our wonderful people in the children's field, for whom there are gazillions? I mean, there are so many of us, to sort of think of, okay, most of my time is going to be spent taking care of the kids, but a portion of my life and a portion of my organization's life is going to be spent. How do we become a political force to be reckoned with? I did a national conference. 14 cities came. I've got 40 people who've come to the trainings that we've done. 14 that have something in the pipeline. And in the meantime, San Francisco's not the only place that's done it. We've had children's funds in Seattle and Portland and Oakland and King County and Denver and Florida and Baltimore just replicated what San Francisco done, and Philadelphia just did a soda tax. And I tell people, like, okay, do what they did in Oakland. Like, half the money goes to the police, but half the money goes to prevention. So help people find those creative kinds of solutions where they can get the kind of support that they need. And so of these, Missouri. Missouri's right near here. Missouri's like north of here. They have 8 counties that have passed a children's fund for mental health and related services. They just passed one in Kansas City. It's an 1/8 of a cent sales tax. It is going to foster care, homeless kids, and mental health services. Okay, if they can do it in Missouri. They have developed a formula where they get some of the big health institutions to give money to the campaign and realize they're going to get money from the fund afterwards. It's not perfect. In our world, it's got to go to the community-based organizations. Well, you do what you can do in the culture of your community. And 8 places in Missouri and Kansas City just passing this is totally remarkable. The results are all pretty well documented. These funds all have some very important things in common. One, they all focus on prevention. They all have an oversight body, entity, department that then becomes an arm of the city or county. They leverage more dollars than they raise. And so I want to convince people that we are living in what could be. I'm trying to take a deep breath and saying, what can you do while Trump is president? But, looking to the local level, looking at organizing, looking at building a base, looking at how things will trickle up and what we'll do for the next administration. That's been exciting to me my whole life, but it's also very important and particularly timely as we are all in mourning and try to figure out how we're going to take some positive steps forward. So that if people have questions, I'd love to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. If you have any questions, we do have some time, and raise your hand, we'll get a microphone to you.
Oh, so did this sound like a crazy lady from San Francisco? Did this sound like maybe we could do something in Little Rock? Maybe there's sort of more potential, or maybe when I leave the school, I could, any thoughts about this?
Right here.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Miller, and I'm a first-year student. Thank you for being here and speaking with us at lunch earlier as well. My question, Arkansas leads the nation in teen pregnancy rates, and particularly with 18 and 19-year-olds, but as you talk and with my background, that's kind of where I see this going. So what, if any, work was done in San Francisco around education and prevention when it comes to teen pregnancy? And Arkansas is a huge abstinence-only, if any, education, so.
We are a different culture when it comes to teen pregnancy. We don't have the resistance to the kind of education that you all do. But these clinics in schools, they are a lifeline. And you don't have to say we're, dealing with teen pregnancy. Most of the visits are about emotional and psychological and women's health issues. So to me, it's just been remarkable in shifting, in addressing that issue. So getting health care right to where the kids are seems to me a core part of it. I don't have experience sort of with the political battles of, what you can and can't say in a school district. You can see my point of view about it, but the clinics are a nice sort of stealth way to go at it, because you are going at the same thing. And then, of course, the teen pregnancy that is all about give young women, give young people an opportunity, and an opportunity for education, an opportunity for positive, constructive things to do, et cetera. And that also addresses indirectly the need. Yeah.
Right over here.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for speaking. My name is Emily, and I'm also a first-year student here. I'm curious, just moving forward after the election, you've mentioned a lot of organizing that you've done, and I'm wondering if you have any insight to offer in terms of mobilizing. You talked about children, you talked about parents, you talked about so many different groups. So I'm wondering, from an organizing perspective, what your take is moving forward.
In the Trump era, is that the question? There are demonstrations happening all over the country right now. not just in the Bay Area and not just in the cities. There are, I personally think it's great. I think we have to help young people talk about this, have a say about this, mourn about it, demonstrate about it, and then move on to, okay, what do you want? What are the constructive things that you want? How do you go from screaming in the streets to sort of building an agenda? My husband is very upset about Occupy Wall Street because they never had an agenda. So, but I'm all about how you go from the organizing to the agenda, and sort of we have found in the places that our community-based organizations are really good platforms for young people organizing and having their say, but you have to become trained in how to empower young people and how to help them move from just the demonstration to the constructive agenda and what we do next. But a horror show is an organizer's dream. There are people who say, let's make it terrible because then we'll have the revolution. But I'm not one of those people. But rather than shut down that opportunity, sort of my instincts are, how do we capitalize on it? How do we hear what's happening and the pain people are going through? I don't know about here, but we've had now meetings in a couple places I work, just sort of morning meetings with young people who are terrified out of their minds and who, it's so how to help and move from that to what can we do about this. I don't know what kind of infrastructure. It depends on the infrastructure in the community where you live. Do you have an infrastructure of community-based organizations? Are there, is it a religious infrastructure who you can turn to and say, let's use this. Let's use this. Because we have no choice. So, yeah.
Margaret, thank you so much for coming. Before we go, I did want to point out one person who has been an advocate for children and families, especially in the state legislature, Representative Clark Tucker. Thank you so much for all the work that you do.
So what do you think?
Margaret, thank you again. Thanks for coming back to Little Rock, and hopefully it's not 25 years until your next visit. Thanks again.
Thank you.